Yes. Good morning, Madam Chair and members. I'm Isabel Garcia, and on behalf of the California Teachers Association, we are in opposition to this bill. I first want to thank the author for meeting with us to hear our concerns, and also with the sponsors, the reading partners, for their good work. And I also want to thank the distinguished panel with all of their passion about that this is an essential imperative, and it is. And we agree with the author that the reading performance and the reading literacy of our students by 4th grade should be the focal point of every LCAP. And because that's part of the 8 state priorities, and that's part of the supplemental and concentration grants, and the very professional development that we need, which is going to be envisioned with the Senate Bill 871 that this committee passed previously, to help districts in what they need to do to implement the data, the evaluation rubrics, and the LCAPs. We're all in transition, and we all know that we need to do better, and we can do better, and we know what it takes to do better. But the reason our opposition is based on, and I want to thank the committee analysis, which was outstanding on addressing all of the issues that involve this bill, the scope of this bill. In reality, teachers in the early grades, and I'm a former Michigan teacher and I have a master's in the teaching of reading, and I share the passion of the author and the sponsors on this issue, that if a local school district that has a majority minority students knows that this is a pervasive issue and they haven't put this front and center, I mean, we know what we can say to that. Shame on them, right? So, but in reality, this bill layers new testing that we're already doing in the formative diagnostic assessments that are available to the teachers of California, both on the digital library and everywhere. We have the assessments and the tools, and both at the district level, teacher development level, we know as early childhood education teachers, we know where our students are every step of the way. And if they're falling behind, we know what we need to do. A diagnostic assessment is to inform teaching and learning. And the way it's envisioned in this bill is to be used as a single high-stake measure with a performance benchmark, which is not the purpose of why a diagnostic assessment was designed to do. So our opposition is not about the concept and the importance of reading for California students, but it doesn't take into account the developmental differences of pupils with disabilities and long-term English learners in its approach. So between all the issues that were raised in the bill analysis, we would just add that, again, with the LCAP and the 8 state priorities, and this should be a priority for every LCAP of are we, like Dr. McNamara on the previous support witness said, that it shouldn't be an option, that this should be an essential imperative, and they can do that already at the local level. So our opposition is not to the concept, but it's the layering and duplicative efforts on top of what we're already doing that we think would impede what we're doing. I mean, the individual reading plan, which is similar to an IEP for people with disabilities, if the LCAP thinks that's the right approach, they can do that, just like the South Bay LCAPs were indicated in the previous panel. So for those reasons, we're urging and opposed to the bill, regretfully, and we want to continue to work with the author on this important issue and thank him for bringing it forward.
Thank you very much. Any other opposition? Please.
My name is Matthew Kogan from United Teachers Los Angeles, and I used to teach first grade. I just want to remind you of what we all know about reading. A young reader reads a few words and then stops. They stare and struggle with one word they don't know. And that reading doesn't continue and their comprehension doesn't continue. They need a reader, a parent, or a teacher to help them learn that word. And no amount of measurement can replace that. The young child needs help with reading. Now, when you have a California average of 24-1 as opposed to 16-1 nationally, that means that each child in the class has probably less than 2 minutes per hour to read with that teacher. Students need more time with their teacher to read. It's the class size. We're never going to get to where we want to go with the class sizes we have now. Thank you.
Any other opposition? Any questions from members? Yes, Senator Vidak.
Thank you, Senator. Question, I've heard that some of the districts are doing this and many are not, or many are. Do we have any data on how many this affects or anything like that?
I'm sure we could come up with it, but it would, based on the fact that there are over 1,000 educational districts in the state of California, that would be hard to do. If I could bring it, imagine you have over 1,000 districts in the state of California with over 1,000 different strategies. And we understand that they all may have a different approach, they all might be in different environments, they all might be in different communities. That's why we need this bill. We need this bill because we have schools that receive kids, especially in populations that are very poor, that tend to be transient, that tend to move around a lot. They can come from a district in your community to mine or vice versa. And the teacher would have to face with reevaluating this child all over again. So what the teachers are saying, it's okay, leave our teachers the responsibility of having to do something again that may have already been done before. I think that's a complete waste of money. When they say the solution is money, they're standing here saying, no, we want to waste more money. We want our teachers to work harder. And for those areas that don't have it, well, we don't care if those young people aren't assessed and don't have a reading plan, because we're looking at a district-wide level. And if the district is doing okay, let that one child fail. We don't care, let them fall off the map. That is not what I'm here about today. I think we can do better. I think we have plenty of expert testimony and a line more of people that are saying we absolutely need to do this at the statewide level because it would save us money. It would actually save us money, and to get, even if they have a different style of teaching that kid, imagine that kid changing a school and having a whole assessment already having been done and a whole tool for how to get him to the next level for the teachers of the next district to continue forward with. That's why we need this at the state level.
And then the opposition is saying that we had diagnostic testing going on already, but yet in the same testimony you're saying shame on a whole bunch of folks that aren't doing it. How can you explain that to me? Well, how we're doing it already, but yet we're not?
No, I was referring to the panel, the support witnesses. Dr. McNamara mentioned that in South Bay, they put that in their LCAP, and that this should not be, while they're doing it, everybody should be doing it. It shouldn't be an option. So I was making the case that if this is part of the 8 state priorities, and this is and the community knows that their students are struggling with this historically and pervasively, let's say with their student demographics, if they have what they mentioned, that they had over 80% Latino Hispanic students, and that they've always been in program improvement at their district. So I was saying that if you do not, if you have a district like that and you don't put that in your LCAP, yes, that's what I was referring to, then we know what the answer is, that shame on them if they don't make this an essential imperative, because they can do that at the local level with the LCAPs.
And your suggestion to remedy that problem? Do you have?
I'm saying that the state has, when we eliminated the second grade test, the STAR test, that is now a powerful diagnostic tool that can be used. I'm saying, I don't know, the department staff may be here, but they can tell you all of the diagnostic tools that they have put on the digital library and available to all districts to use to supplement what the Smarter Balance has already provided with the formative, interim, and summative assessments, so that we will always know, and then the district assessments that they purchase, and then the teacher-developed assessments. So in the early grades, the teachers know, they have the tools to know where their students are, and they're constantly assessing. They know where their students are, because those assessments are what inform the teaching and learning. That's what I'm saying, that we have the adequate tools right now.
But it's not happening, correct?
in some
in
schools.
some, in many
Well, this is
schools.
what the author and the panel before was saying, that it's not happening with consistency across, that it's happening, but it's not happening with consistency. But then why isn't it? That's the question at the local level. Why isn't it?
Right, and
We need this
and
bill.
he's trying to address what,
Trying to create a mandate.
trying to fix it, right?
He's trying to fix it.
Yeah. Okay.
That should be done at the local level. I'm sorry. Any good teacher,
Another conversation.
grades 1 through 4. Madam Chair, I'm sorry, I'll go through you.
I know many,
Any
many
good
good
teacher,
teachers. I
this
have
is
brothers
what
and
you
sisters.
learn in
Yes.
teacher education preparation. This is what elementary teachers do.
I understand.
And if it's not happening, then it needs to be handled locally. And that's about leadership. That's about leadership. I think it's a travesty if they're not administering these assessments and they're not monitoring their students on reading achievement. I'll tell you, I've visited thousands of schools in half the states in this country. This is what they do. Layering on another state mandate to require an IEP for all of these students is not the solution. We agree it's a problem, but this is not the solution.
Senator Huff.
And if I could just respond to that, Madam Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry.
He says it needs to happen, but it's not happening. This bill would make that happen. So this is, if that's really the goal, then why are they opposing this bill?
It's another issue. Senator Huff.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is less of a question and more of a statement. So I've been in Education Committee for 12 years now, and we're still talking about the same issues, and it's different faces around the table talking, different faces at the dais, but we're still failing our kids. In spite of what we do, there's never enough money. We have a high dropout rate. Of those that do graduate, they're not prepared to get into the universities. Some of those do get into the CSUs are still we're spending millions remediating those. And I think we all agree that reading is a threshold skill. And if you don't read by 4th grade, the data shows that, you're going to have problems throughout life, because if you can't read, you can't function in our society. We had set up. I think we all agree on that. So the question is, do we have a state role? Do we have a local role? I remember one of the first presentations I got in Education Committee in the Assembly was almost a one-to-one correlation between high poverty areas, high poverty schools, and low performance. And I was more interested in the one high-performing, high poverty. How did they beat the system? Well, it turns out they tested the jeepers out of those students, and our educational establishment doesn't like testing. But, that particular school in Inglewood, somebody had provided me details the following day, became a national model. And it involved a lot of testing, but it also involved teachers committed to making a difference. Our biggest problem is, in fact, one of the people at the table said, let's talk about the real solution to the issue. The real solution is quit treating our teachers like interchangeable widgets. They are not. Some of them, or most of them, are very high-performing, very good. Some of them are slugs, shouldn't be in teaching. We have no way to differentiate or remove the slugs. Excuse me, anybody that's not performing. But that's what we've got to do. But in the meantime, because absent that, I think we do have to have more proscriptive means to address this chronic failure of our kids. And it's real frustrating to me. I mean, I come from a family of teachers. You guys all know that. One of my brothers was a reading specialist in his school district, and he was big on reading to kids. Not everybody has that ability. So what do we do as a society to come around these kids that don't have the fundamentals? And this is not a perfect bill by any means, but at least it's a step, I think, in the right direction of focusing on the problem. By the way, I carried the legislation to extend STAR testing in 2nd grade. Some of you remember that, and I fought for keeping some of that testing in, and even while we were developing the standards for the Common Core, so we had something, we weren't leaving these kids behind. And as is corroborated here, one of my school districts saying, we find the STAR test a very powerful tool in 2nd grade to figure out, or even when a kid transfers into a school district, where they are in the reading level. And so, you have to do some testing, but you have to have a plan as well. So I don't know if this is the right solution or not, but I'm with you, and I will support your bill today, and I think you can sense the frustration. And I share your frustration, because we're leaving too many kids behind, and we got to figure it out.
Okay, any other comments or questions from members? Senator Pan.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Chair. And Senator West, I want to thank you for raising this issue. Certainly, this has been pointed out, there's a large body of research that indicates the importance of achieving proficiency in reading by end of third grade and the impact that has on their education. And certainly, in fact, for myself, although I'm not a grade school teacher, as a developmental pediatrician, and I serve on our local United Way board. We made that one of our priorities for our funding efforts. The question I do have, though, is I'm not hearing a lot of opposition to the goal of the bill, but I am hearing concerns about the mechanism and trying to achieve that. And so I guess one question, because you made reference to, well, if you have a child who may be in one district and he may move to another district, because what you're calling for is that each child who isn't performing has a reading plan, correct? So some questions about how that and I guess when you say reading plan, I presume it's some very explicit plan. I mean, in the sense that I hope that right now, and you may, I know that one of your points is that perhaps it's not, is that you have elementary school teachers who are working with kids and they do have a plan or strategy for the kid. It may just not be, in a certain format or formalized in writing or so forth. But I would hope that we talk about reading, writing, arithmetic, that that's a fundamental thing that they're hopefully doing. But in terms of the formalized reading plan, and assessment and plan, so the teacher they're in first grade, they're having challenges, they do an assessment, they do a plan, that child moves to a different district, second grade or third grade. Does that plan stay with them? That other school district may have, those teachers may use a different tool, they may have a different, are they therefore compelled, the other district, to then, for that one student who now moved in, do the original plan, or do they then move it to what approach they're using? I'm just, because you talked about how, well, you have a student who maybe from one district to another, how that happens. And then I noticed that this bill, basically is focused on the public schools with less than 50%, right? So those, and if they move from a district that's where they had the plan like that and they move to another district that doesn't fit, they maybe move to a district that doesn't have as many challenges, was that plan still in place? Because now hopefully, I believe that school would actually be doing something for children who have challenges. I certainly hope so, just because they didn't have a high percentage. But so I'm just trying to get a sense of this plan. Is it for, is it something that follows them along everywhere they go? Is that something that is just for the year? And because you made reference to changing districts. So I'm just trying to understand, how does this functionally work?
I sit here confused about the opposition saying that this bill shouldn't be happening because it's a mandate, but they call out every aspect of the bill saying that's what we need. So we had some testimony, we got to involve the parents. This involves the parents. This says, okay, the parents have to be involved in the reading strategy. Bring them to the table. There's a certain level of accountability there. It says that there has to be an assessment. They're saying, well, we have the diagnostic tools. All the education and community came and said, we have the diagnostic tools available to us today. But we just don't want to be told that we have to use them into helping people learn how to read, because we may have other goals. This allows the district to deal with the challenges within their district. And they talked about more money. I agree. We do need more money in our school districts. Money isn't going to fix the problem, though. Money is going to help fix the problem, but it's not the only solution. That's why I'm making reference to the fact that this Senate is proposing putting aside $250 million for more prisons. And it's a question of priorities. For all of us here in this room, it's a question of priorities in education. What's more important to us, and what should be more important to us when educating our children? When we know that helping those young kids at the first 3 grades, 4 grades of their life is so important. Why aren't we making that more of a focus in the California curriculum? This is a statewide issue, because no matter how you look at it, you can go to any district and go within the Latino, African-American communities, even the white community, all communities, and find that at those levels, we don't have proficiency in reading in more than 50% of the population. So you can't say this is a local issue when it transcends school boundaries. So yes, you're right. This is the only part of our curriculum that a child will be able to take with them everywhere they go in the school. The parent will go with that child, and the child will take that information and that reading plan with them everywhere they go. And you can't say that for any other part of education. I think it's that important. I think we're falling so far behind that we have to start making things priorities here. And this is an area where I think we agree. The only thing we don't agree on that, whether it's a mandate or not. And I believe it is so important, it's got to be a mandate. We have to come together as a community and say, yes, reading is that important. Because without reading, you won't learn math, you won't learn history, you won't learn anything else without having a proficiency in reading. And I think this is the first step for our educational system in California.
Senator Blau, oh, I'm sorry. Senator Pan, you could continue.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that the plan does follow them, and that as they move to new districts, new schools, that they would basically, that child, I mean, because sometimes different districts use different tools, different things, materials, but that one plan would then, they would have to do something different for that particular child.
You mentioned that we had an educator testify to the fact that we can measure where children are in terms of a number system.
Okay.
And when a child goes to another school and says, I'm at level 38, that in the educational community means something. So yes, it would be like a patient file.
Okay, all right. Okay, and then I guess the other question is, because we're talking about priorities, and I think one of the tensions that certainly is described in the analysis, you know, we sort of policy-wise have moved towards saying, you know, in the governor's term, subsidiary, right? So basically, we've reduced the number of mandates from the state, let's move them down. Now, of course, reading by end of third grade is a very high priority, and I appreciate you're putting it there. I agree with you that it's one of those critical points in the education of the child, and if they don't pass that point, that, you know, high risk of failure moving forward. And I don't know whether you, in terms of, so I guess one other question I have is that if stepping back a little bit, I know it's made reference that is it one of the 8 priority? I'm trying to think in terms of the evaluation, right? We have, because part of LCAP, we also have this piece about having, being able to evaluate school districts and giving them assistance that they have trouble and so forth. So I guess the question is that where does this issue about being able to read at grade level by end of third grade or by beginning of fourth grade land in our evaluation program, and in terms of assessing where school districts, if school districts aren't performing on that, how does that affect them in terms of their need for assistance or not assistance? So I just, in terms of our oversight of LCFF and so forth, where does that fit in?
You're talking about accountability.
Yes, I'm talking about accountability, right.
And
yes.
Currently, honestly, we don't have accountability. If we're going to go, there was under No Child Left Behind, the federal government said, if you guys don't perform, we're going to put you, you got to change your plan of your school, and we're going to remove funding. That's not a plan. That's not even accountability, because what you're doing is you're punishing a school to fail. We talked about this when we approved the LCFF. The local control funding formula, I was part of those discussions. We said, how are we going to hold people accountable? we really don't have a way of holding them accountable other than removing funds. The state of California has pretty much put itself in a position that we're only a funding arm for local government. But when you have everybody, performing differently, you have some completely failed, others doing well. I mean, we really don't have a way to go back and say, we're going to reward the ones that are doing well, and we're going to punish the ones that aren't. With what? There really isn't a clawback of funding. There isn't really a system where we're going to go there and fire the...
However, in terms of, and actually, I don't know if there's someone from, whether the superintendent's public instructions office can perhaps answer that question, or staff, but...
The difference of this program is that Senator Huff talked about there being some bad teachers. If you get one bad teacher 1 year, it sets you behind 3 years, and it could be more if if you get a bad teacher in the early years. This system, this program here, would involve more people in developing the curriculum, and it would ensure, because it's a step-by-step process, that the child is meeting those benchmarks. And if there's a problem at home, the parent is involved in helping the student meet the benchmarks, because it's really hard to create a system of accountability in education. They've tried at the federal and state level and failed. I mean, we really have very few choices on how to keep kids on track. This is one of them. Did you want to?
To the chair,
Sorry,
is that appropriate?
Please, yes. You're going to ask the department
Yes.
or the SPI? Yes.
If that's appropriate, yes. Thank you.
So I'll answer both questions. So one question is...
Wait, hold it.
I'm sorry.
It's Sue. Are you asking a question to the comment?
Well, it's the same question that I know that Senator Hueso gave an answer to, but I just want to also hear from what is the nature of our current accountability system, particularly around the issue of this critical issue about reading at grade level. How would that fit in to our current system? And that, I think, it speaks a bit to what is this trying to fill, what this is trying to address as well. So does that make sense?
Yeah, so very quickly, there are no measures.
Excuse me. You're the superintendent. We're talking about the superintendent of public instruction.
That's okay.
Sorry.
Good morning. Sue Vang on behalf of the State Superintendent of Public Instruction. The LCAP does have 8 state priorities, and within those 8 state priorities, there is one on student achievement, student outcomes, and so locally, the state legislation and current statute does suggest certain indicators that districts can look at, but districts can certainly include additional, and I believe the superintendent probably would be able to speak to your local LCAP plan in terms of what they're including. But reading is an outcome that districts can choose to add to their LCAP plan.
So just to clarify, I heard you said can add to do, or in terms of the 8 priorities, what are we monitoring school districts for in terms of, because what we're hearing is you have school districts that aren't performing, right, at least on this particular measure, right? And I hear a lot of agreement, and I've seen a lot of research saying this is a particularly important, a marker of progress and to move for success. So is this something that, so where does that fall in terms of state oversight? I realize there's tension between mandates and so forth, but in terms of at least on the outcome side, that school districts are assessing, are basically addressing that issue if there's a problem in their school district, and if they're not, and that if they're not, that there are some consequences, like they get assistance or whatever else that to take care of. I mean, is it just simply an option, or is it something they actually have to demonstrate some proficiency in? That's what I'm trying to understand. Does that make sense? I mean, so is it merely, well, we didn't think this is important, so we didn't bother, or is there actually, well, you need to show that kids can read in school to show that the district's plan is acceptable and doing well and so forth. So